Hello guys, what is up? My name is Dylan. Welcome back to the Popcorn Podcast, the 5th official episode of the Popcorn Podcast. Today we're going to be talking all things Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and I am very lucky to be joined with a full panel of guests, some truly wonderful individuals, which I'm very excited to hear from. A couple of familiar faces, as you guys might have seen before, but also perhaps some new ones. So maybe, I think on that note, why don't we start with our newest guest, Dan?
Okay.
Would you like to?
Sure.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
You want me to start this off?
Go for it.
My name's Daniel. I am an actor and a filmmaker. I'm getting into that, brewing into it. But yeah, I'm a big fan of films. I call myself a film buff, but there's a lot I haven't seen. But there's some intrinsic knowledge through the ages, and just media is in me somewhere. But I love films, all things films, and a big fan of Marvel and the MCU. So I'm very happy to be here. Very honoured. Thank you very much.
The honor is all mine.
Yeah.
And to the right, we have
hello,
a person who needs no introduction.
Yeah, hi. I'm Joe's best friend. Yeah, and glad to be here talking about Guardians.
For those who are just watching, what is?
Oh yeah, so I'm Panwa.
That's about it.
Film god.
There we go. And Ryan, who do we have here?
Hi, so I'm Chris. I feel like a bit of a not an outsider. I feel like I'm the one with the least credentials. We've got an actor, someone who does his own film stuff. Obviously you. And here's me, who's just here for the ride and here for the bounce.
Yeah,
you're great. Don't put yourself down.
My credentials are I live and die for these films. We this is so important to us. We go to opening day basically since these films started to come out. Marvel's a big part of our lives, and we just love the stuff. We love to talk about it.
Chris has very much been my partner in crime through this journey, which is why he's here. But anyways, moving on. So we are going to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the latest entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by the one and only James Gunn. It goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. This episode will contain spoilers for the film, so please, if you haven't seen the film, don't listen, don't watch, go and check the film out. I think it's great. I think these guys think it's pretty great as well. Go and check it out and come back and check this episode out at a later time. But yeah, that is your spoiler warning. So I think to kick this off, I'm going to do a little plot synopsis. So without further ado, let's do it. So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. After purchasing Nowhere from the Collector, the Guardians of the Galaxy attempt to make it a safe haven for aliens and other intergalactic refugees. However, trouble never seems to escape this family of misfits, as Rocket Raccoon is sent into critical condition following a brutal attack from the seemingly unstoppable Adam Warlock. As a result, Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, must lead the team on one last mission to save their furry friend, a mission that could very well mean the end of the Guardians as we know it. Right. Guys, what do we think about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? In fact, what were we thinking beforehand? What was your expectations for the film going in? Should we start with... Let's start with Dan. Yeah.
I think the MCU needed some sort of saving or salvation of some sort. I know these films post-Endgame. I knew I'd always be watching them. I knew I'd always be in there. But there was something, as I'm sure we'll discuss, something lacking. Something was just sort of making me feel like these films were fodder. They were coming out so quickly within one another, but between one another. But then obviously Guardians of the Galaxy has such unique tone. Very excited, and despite everything, I thought James Gunn has this. I think we'll be all right. There's a tone that just can't be done by anyone else. It's so unique. Surely Volume 3 will be the one to bring us back. And I'll say. Do you want me to say what I thought, or is that just the pre? And yeah, I think he did the job. I think it's funny because he did exactly what I thought he was going to do, which was, and nothing really surprised me because I have a lot of respect for James Gunn, and his films. But no, he did a really good job and a really emotional job, and just put his mark on the MCU, which will probably everyone will talk about as probably I hope like the high point of his career and the MCU, and just that he stamped it. And I think I want to see more. and we're not going to see more MCU from him.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It seems Disney seem to just give everyone what they want. So maybe in 20 years, I wouldn't be surprised if Volume 8 was just James Gunn poking his head back in.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I really loved it. I thought it was
I
great.
agree with you. I feel like it's nice because obviously now he's become the head of DC and he's got all that stuff to go and get his creative fingers into. But I feel like it's quite nice. He's almost given this like one last present to us Marvel fans.
Yeah.
As someone who has very much been instrumental in building this universe with the other two Guardians films and these characters. He's a director who knows these characters so well, I feel. But yeah, like you, I wasn't surprised that this film was great. I was despite the lackluster films that Phase 4 has given us, I was still excited very much for Volume 3. But what about you, Chris?
See, going into the film, we've spoken about this before on the other podcast we did together last time for Ant-Man. I feel we both feel the same way that these films they're just being pumped out. I think you said it perfectly. These films, we feel they're just fodder. They're just being pumped out with not a lot of thought into story, into kind of building on the basis of characters. So to be honest with you, going into the film, I didn't have very high expectations. And I think after watching the film, it was like, oh, that was good.
Yes,
that was a good film.
Yeah.
It was a breath of fresh air. It was something that I was really, really happy to experience. I felt like I was actually in the moment of the film. I wasn't zoned out watching a film. I was focused. I was at most of the time I was looking forward to seeing what was ahead of the film. It gripped me at some points. It saddened me. It was a really good film, I thought. And yeah, I'm happy that I didn't go in with big expectations because now it was, for me, it was so much better. It made it so much better to just go in and just experience it without having any kind of any of the other films in mind, apart from, of course, the other Guardians films as well. Because these films were good films.
So speaking of the other Guardians films, Panwa, I know you have quite a unique take on this, but how do you feel like Volume 3 compares to the other two films?
Sure. So, I do have a massive hot take with this.
Exciting.
I think that Guardians 1 is perhaps, maybe not, but perhaps, in my opinion, the most overrated MCU film.
Ooh.
Sorry. And I think that Guardians Volume 2 is the most underrated by a country mile. I think that the reason I feel this way is because I'm not just looking at them from a story or a character point of view, but from a filmmaking point of view too. And upon rewatching both of them after seeing 3, you can really see how much James Gunn has grown and evolved and upgraded, in my opinion, as a filmmaker, as a craftsman, as an artist. The way he uses the camera, the way he uses music, the way he edits, the way he incorporates VFX into his films. Volumes 2 and 1 are, in my opinion, they almost feel like they're directed by different people. That's how much I feel James Gunn has grown. And to see him go on to do The Suicide Squad and then the holiday special and now this, the film language that he has kind of established for himself, the way he moves the camera, the way he lights each scene, all of these different things, you see him grow and grow and grow and grow more. Personally, I would say that Guardians 2, just personal preference, was that sweet spot.
Okay.
Of coming from the slightly indie filmmaker, not really knowing how to do big scenes of one versus this where he's just firing on all cylinders and there's like not a single static shot and everything is moving and the camera's spinning 360 every other shot, whatever. Volume 2 from a filmmaking point of view was that perfect sweet spot. And also on an emotional level in terms of characters, in terms of what actually happens in that film, Volume 2 is my favorite still. But I think there is so much to love about Volume 3 and stuff that we'll all talk about in just a second. But it's very satisfying, as you guys said, to see one last gift from James Gunn. For me, it's almost a confirmation of James Gunn's evolution. As much as the Guardians franchise has been about the evolution of Peter Quill or Rocket or Gamora or Drax or Mantis, Nebula, whatever, Groot, for me, it's been also about James Gunn's evolution as a filmmaker. And that is crystal clear, cemented thanks to this film.
Very well said. And I know, that is a hot take, surely, I think, with Volume 2 as your top.
Yeah.
For me, I think I still like the first film the best. And then I won't even lie. I think this one isn't actually too far off. I watched it a second time and I was like, you know what? I was kind of expecting me to my sort of love for the film to slightly diminish, but it didn't. And I had a blast with the second time as well. Volume 2 for me, I agree with everything that you've said, but for me, I wasn't the biggest fan of the visual language of the film, less so with the directing, but more so with how the film looked. It was doing all these crazy things with colors, but for me, it felt the most artificial out of the three.
Sure.
Whereas this third one, I think, was like, that was my sweet spot. It had a, like, from the, we've already transitioned into everything we've liked about the film. But for me, like the tone of the film, right from the first second, it was a very ominous tone. You knew that the film was going to be considerably darker than the other two. The color palette, I think he used the same DP as he did for the Suicide Squad
and Volume 2.
And that's surprising because I didn't know he did Volume 2 as well, which is quite interesting. But I think he's definitely taken a lot of what he did on the Suicide Squad with DC and brought it into this film. I don't know about you guys as well. Where would you rank Volume 3 amongst the other two?
So I'm with you. I wasn't taken by Volume 1 or
Guardians
of the Galaxy.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
I know, but I hadn't quite found my Marvel footing at that point. Okay. So I never had Star Wars or any sort of film or franchise to cling on to as a kid. And I saw Guardians, I think it was during Age of Ultron era of MCU is where I thought, I might cling on to this. There's something about these connected worlds which I haven't had before. And but I just wasn't, the style, I think I didn't appreciate quite how different it was. And it's on rewatches where I realised Guardians of the Galaxy is such a unique and incredible film in what it is and what it's trying to do, and the music and just how it stands out. It's weird as well. It's weird and wonderful. It's so unashamedly its own thing.
Yeah.
But when I put them as a whole, I'd say I think it goes 3, 2, 1 reverse for me actually. Yeah. 2, I was really in it. I found it. I think really championing the weird, and I think something about the there was some sort of artificial green screeny vibe to number 2.
That was my issue with the film.
Yeah. But the stuff with ego. And I do like number 1 being about his mother and the second about his father. Yeah. And then the third kind of being not kind of like a right angle onto Rocket, but like I think
about family.
Yeah, exactly. The cadence into that was definitely made sense.
Yeah.
And I think Rocket's story is Rocket could easily just be this CGI eye candy that we just sort of stare at. And I don't think any film has really committed to. Also, I think obviously he has a love for animals as well, and sort of. Peter, or what they call Peter, have claimed this film is like incredible in terms of representing animal rights and things. Yeah, I saw that. But the love for that character that he's obviously had, and I think James Gunn sees himself in Rocket as well. Yeah. That the film it does that beautifully, and the Rocket story is just so well told and built up from the first one as well. But I think it is just. Yeah, I'd say it's the top of the three.
The top of the bunch.
Yeah, sure.
As well, Chris?
I think I'm a 1, 3, 2.
1, 3, 2.
But I have to agree with you. I think the third film wasn't too far off the first one. But for me, the first film, the first Guardians, for me, to describe it, if I could just to describe it, the way I remember it watching it the first time as a kid, they were like the bad boy kind of Avengers kind of thing. Where like they're like a bad bunch of people. They weren't all heroes, thieves, criminals, ravagers, coming together as a family and doing the business. And there was something about like that dynamic, that initial dynamic that was different in the Avengers. Whereas the Avengers, you have Captain America, who's a bit of a good boy. Iron Man, playboy. All these another kind of family dynamic. But whereas this family's like all these guys come from really dark backgrounds. As we see in this film with Rocket especially. But what I liked so much about this film is that when exploring, you spoke about how. A lot of the film was about Rocket, but it didn't feel like it was just all about him like the whole time. I feel like all the characters had their moment in it, and I think something that I did as well. Another thing I liked is that they introducing Adam Warlock. We'll speak more about that in a minute, but I feel like he had a good amount of screen time and a good amount of influence on the film.
That's interesting because I thought you were going to be the person today to be like, you know what, Adam Warlock just didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
But
we'll go on to that.
We'll get on to Adam Warlock. Yeah, no, I completely agree. James Gunn, like, even though this film is very, like, it's almost kind of Rocket's film, it's his sort of time to shine. We've been sort of teased, his backstory has been teased in the other two as well, and now we're finally getting it.
It's funny, he's actually on life support a lot of the film, like 80% of it. Like, obviously the flashbacks are such a massive part. Yeah. But like a majority of the film, he's kind of out of action. Yeah. He's not sort of just foaming at the mouth.
The interesting thing for me is that the way they structured it, as you said, so much of the movie is about Rocket. Yes, because he is not only, you know, as I say, the protagonist of the film, but he's also the mission of the film. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's just save Rocket. Yeah. And thanks to the flashbacks, if you didn't have those flashbacks, Rocket would not have a role until the end of the movie when he comes back, essentially. But thanks to those flashbacks being peppered in, that's the brilliance of James Gunn's writing, the brilliance of the structure of the film. And I have problems with the structure, which we'll get into. But what's so great about it is it's clear from the way the movie is structured who the main character is, whilst not explicitly saying, look, this is the main character because we're spending 24/7 with him and he's in every shot and he's in every close-up. But by doing those flashbacks, it helps the audience to subconsciously register the fact that Rocket is important.
Yeah, and just building off this whole the whole thing being mission to save Rocket. When the film opens, the tone is slightly different, slightly off. The color palette is different. The opening song is
Radiohead.
Radiohead.
Oh, it's acoustic version, is it?
Yeah, and it's the acoustic version. And then out of nowhere, Adam Warlock just comes in and just starts going on a rampage, and you're hooked then and there. Like, this family is in danger, and Rocket's injured, and then all of them snap back into action, and it's essentially a race against time to save their friend, right? And I feel like just that in of itself helps the film so much because it establishes time barriers, it establishes a sense of urgency, and it helps with the pacing. I know you have an issue with the pacing when it comes to the second act, but when I watched it the second time, I actually didn't feel it as much.
Really?
Very much so. And I just think above everything else, it just demonstrates the love that these characters have for each other, and that is something I feel like a lot of audience members can relate to, and it's, you know, one of the strong points of this of these characters. Rocket's backstory, very much the heart of the film, and I was also really surprised at some points at how sort of dark they went. I thought we had gone past that with the MCU. I thought, you know what, we're not going to see stuff that we kind of saw back in phase 1.
I think with animals, it's easier to kind of make this kind of dark because they're sentient animals. They're not people. So I think having this kind of dark background and this dark origin story of being like horrific, because imagine if these were children you're talking about with their arms chopped off and things like that, but they're sentient animals and basically sentient children. Like just like people. But I think that was very clever with what they did with it, and it is part of a lot of Rocket's backstory in the comics as well, and it does weave back into it. But it would be a disservice to not bring up No Sleep Till Brooklyn. That scene, oh my gosh, we'll get there in a sec, because that was incredible. What I was going to say is, did any of you? When was the last time you guys watched Endgame? Just
not long ago.
I watch sort of snippets now and again. I sort of give myself a little
same.
So what I found quite touching about this film, maybe this is just me, but was the fact that in Endgame, Rocket was the one who lost his family, and he was doing everything he could to save them, to bring them back.
Because was it him and Nebula who?
It was him and Nebula.
They cut that nice scene where they hold hands.
Yeah, and sort of in this film, it's very much
the reverse.
Yes. And like, I feel like watching Endgame and then this back to back would be a nice sort of double bill. Yeah. But no, that's something I just found really like just a nice detail, like a nice touching detail there. But one thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was the High Evolutionary.
Yes.
What did you guys think of him?
Who wants to go first?
I can say. What's the actor's name?
Chukwudi.
He's amazing. I think it's just nice to have a villain who is just unashamedly evil, and that's kind of it.
Yes.
And as nice as it is, as we know from Endgame, and what they're trying to do in Quantumania is to have a backstory.
Yes.
And it feels natural in Endgame and Infinity War, I should say, probably more so. But I think now everyone feels like your villain has to have this in-depth kind of motivations and and it has to all make sense exactly what they want.
Yeah.
But just he's just a dickhead. He's just horrible. He's vile. He's just no one wants. You just don't want this guy. You're not rooting for him, and that's fine. And it's just a bit of straight out Disney villain screaming. He's a bit shouty. Maybe that's my actor's perspective from it. But I think he was good, and I think he was weirdly likable from considering the awful things he was doing, and just committed. And you just needed a bit. It was just simple. He didn't need to think too much about what he wanted. And but why is he doing that again? Oh, it's because when he was a kid, this and that. And he's just filled with hate and wants power and control, and that's all we need, really.
Yeah, and you understood his mission, because he was he was so obsessed with the whole time. His mission is to essentially perfect organisms, and just, even though you don't root for him because of this really sadistic side to him, you can kind of understand. I guess his purpose and whatnot, and it's always good when a villain has that. Like you said, I think we've been accustomed to this whole thing that villains need a backstory for them to be developed or just good in general. But no, I thought Chukwudi Iwuji, I think, apologies if I'm butchering that name, but I think his performance was terrific. Just his mannerisms, them itself, whenever he was on screen, I feel like he ate the screen up really well.
Chewed the scenery.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And just the fact that he has a personal connection with Rocket in of itself was enough for me. I was like, great.
Was that character mentioned in the previous films? I know he's a massive comic character.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Just this looming kind of dark shit that Rocket's been through is just
It's been peppered throughout, but I don't think it's been explicitly stated as well. To build off of what Dan was saying, we've come from so many different MCU villains who essentially are not villains. Tony Leung is not really a villain. Michael B. Jordan is not really a villain. Scarlet Witch or Namor, they're not really villains. They're just kind of
anti-heroes.
Misled people.
Yeah.
This guy is an actual bad guy.
Yeah.
I love that. And I also got to say, one of my favorite motivations, because of how petty it is the fact that ultimately he hates Rocket because he's jealous of Rocket.
Yeah.
Because Rocket's smarter than him.
Yeah.
And he has created something that has outdone him, which surely you should be proud of that. But hey, I don't know. So I like the fact that he is ultimately just a little petty child about it. I don't know why, but in a weird way, he kind of reminds me of if you took all of the Daniel Craig Bond villains and put them together in one person.
That's
he has elements of Lashif. He has elements of Javier Bardem and Christoph Waltz and Rami Malek. It's just kind of all of them combined into one.
Never in a million years I would have just
Very
thought of something like that, but fair enough. Yeah. Okay, what about you, Chris?
Well, I think I'm going to be devil's advocate here and say one of the big problems I had is that his character is a far cry from what he is in the comics.
Okay.
And one thing that I did notice is that the ship that he uses, the colors that they use, the red, the black, and the silver mixed together, is kind of similar to what the High Evolutionary his suit in the comics, basically, which I did like. I think for the character, he did just seem like a spoiled child. That's what it was, and it was clear that he wanted to be a god. His kind of purpose was to be a god, not to be worshipped, but to have that kind of thing to say that I created these beings, I created perfection, I am therefore God to these. There
is a line where
there is no God. That's why
there is no God. That's why I stepped in.
Yeah,
great line.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think the delusions of grandeur are very clear. I don't know. I wouldn't rank him very high on the list of my favorite villains, to be completely honest with you, in the MCU.
I think, just want to say, out of him, Ego, and Ronan, the Guardians villains, I think he might be my favorite. Just about. I don't know about you guys, but
can I extend that question real quick, just out of curiosity, because we were talking about a lot of this off camera. Take Thanos and Loki out of the equation. Who is your favorite MCU villain?
I like Red Skull.
You're going to need me a minute. That's 30 films to skim through.
I like Tony Leung.
I'm a Tony Leung guy.
That's Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Shang-Chi. No, he's good.
And then Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
Oh, Kate Blanchett as well.
Kate Blanchett.
Those three out.
Yeah, she's good.
I think Red Skull's slept on, man. I think he's a top. I think he's up there. I think he's top.
It's a bit of a shame that he was only in just the one. Well, he's on Vormir. He was only in just the one film, and he's such a big villain.
Yeah.
But
I like. He doesn't do a lot. And if you watch him a Disney Plus series, but Zemo, is it Baron Zemo?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love it.
Civil War,
yeah, he was.
But it's
Daniel
gotten to a
Brühl.
point where he's not a villain anymore either, right?
He's
Like,
in the
Yeah.
club dancing.
But he had a good. I mean, he had. I talk about that backstory being cringe, almost like. But his motivations were they were followed through in Civil War.
Yeah.
And it was human and all that, and I think even Thanos's "I want to destroy half of everything" was a little almost too extreme. I think they found the good middle ground with, is it Daniel Brühl, the actor?
Daniel
Brühl,
Yeah. And he was great. He's been great. But I don't like what they've done with him recently.
I think he's such an underrated.
sorry for the.
Oh, yeah.
No.
We
it's
don't-
good.
we
Yeah,
digress.
that was a good
Yeah.
question. Good question. Just maybe more on the filmmaking, Panwa, if you want to
Sure, yeah.
expand. I think like these films, obviously, they have like Dan was saying his like a very unique stamp on them.
They
with
do.
the music choices,
They do,
the
yeah.
editing, the visual language, the song choices. Once again, I thought were I thought they were
Not
pretty
sure
terrific.
this time
Yeah.
around.
Oh, okay.
Not 100% sure. It might be down to me not knowing them as well. And I did. And Volume 2 is actually, I've sat with those tracks on rewatches, and I've fallen in love with them because of where they were used in the film, and now I love them because I know the film well. So it might be a case of having to know it
Yeah.
a bit more. But for some reason, it didn't quite. I don't know, stand out like how maybe. Like that first scene, "Come and Get Your Love," that's it's such a moment. And then other tracks I don't know. It didn't quite do it for me. There was something slightly missing in the soundtrack vibe.
Fair enough.
So with filmmaking,
Yeah.
I'll give you one pro and one con,
Go for
I guess, from James Gunn's directing kind of style. As we were talking about earlier, the way that he sort of moves the camera, shoots stuff, edits stuff together has become very, very clear of what he likes to do. And I remember when he did The Suicide Squad, it was this, again, same cinematographer as Volume 2, Holiday Special, and I think it's Henry
Henry
Brahms.
Brahms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's also doing The Flash.
Nice.
He's also shooting The Flash. But James Gunn was talking about basically being able to use smaller cameras, more nimble, tactile cameras, and therefore being able to move it around more as a result. What this means is a hell of a lot more camera movement, where, typically film language, you are panning, tilting, dollying in out, up, down, whatever. He's going kind of all over the place with this stuff. And whilst that may seem fun and high energy at first, that's a big pro. One of the cons becomes that there is just no moment of stillness.
Yeah.
Like, why do we love Nolan or Matt Reeves or Matthew Vaughn or even the Russo brothers and their superhero filmmaking? It's because they allow for these moments where the camera sits and you think about that shot of Captain America on the left and just Thanos' army on the right. You don't even have to show it. You know what I'm talking about, right? Or anything from the Batman, because the camera basically doesn't move. Thank you, Greg Fraser. And so I would have loved a bit more subtlety and holding back a little bit more. So that's my one issue. The other issue that I have with this film overall, and I guess we can talk about issues in a second, but this is my personal one. I think that there comes a point where James Gunn with this film has gotten just a bit too ridiculous with his creativity.
Okay.
What I mean by that is that he's become so creative and out there and almost embraced the camp so much, which, by the way, is what most people love about these films. But he's done it so much that it gets to a point where you can't really take some of it seriously. And I give you two examples. One is when they infiltrate in their bright spacesuits that can be seen from a mile away with no stealth elements whatsoever. They infiltrate that organism thing, and you have Nathan Fillion, who's basically dressed like the Michelin Man, and all of the guards are dressed like the Michelin Man. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, when you compare that kind of antagonist to Michael B. Jordan, who has like all of these tattoos, and Namor, who's like an actor,
They did look ridiculous.
You know what I mean? Like,
They did look
there's no sense of genuine danger because you can't take him seriously. Like, again, I could bet any one of us in this room, including and especially Joseph, to beat them, any of those security guards in a fight. Okay, so that's kind of exaggerated, number one. Number two is, for me, Counter-Earth.
Yep.
So I spoke to Dylan about one of my issues with the film being that the Counter-Earth sequence feels like it's in a completely different film. And that because there is so much emphasis on VFX and animals, creatures, aliens, everything, and all of them are done either through pure CGI or motion capture, when you have essentially these practical human beings wearing like animal heads, you don't feel like you're watching the same movie.
Yeah.
And it becomes a bit jarring and you can't take it seriously. And that's kind of partly what is so great about James Gunn, and partly why I think the Suicide Squad works so well, because at least no matter how ridiculous it was still on Earth. You can still see Idris Elba and Margot Robbie and John Cena and whatever. But this one for me, it took it just a touch too far.
Okay. Now I was saying I do agree with you. I think that whole Counter-Earth sequence of sorts, I do feel like that was the weakest part of the film for sure. I don't know. The first time I watched it, it felt like we were on there for a lot longer. Although, like I said, the second time when I watched the pacing,
it
speeds up a bit more. I also feel like it being Counter-Earth, it being very similar to Earth. He wasn't able to do as much visually.
Yeah.
It just looked grey and whatever. Maybe that's what he was going for.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think that was one of my least favorite aspects about the film. I think we're moving sort of onto the mixed and the bad.
Can I add one more tiny little thing? Okay, so this is something that I think you were talking earlier about why you felt Guardians 2 was too artificial. And this is why I love Guardians 2. Okay. So who's a Star Wars fan here? You've never seen Star Wars. You're a Star Wars fan. Okay, so perfect. You've seen Rogue One. That's good enough for me about the example I'm going to make. Disney Star Wars versus George Lucas Star Wars. Yep. Look at the planets. Right, the Disney Star Wars, like water planet, sand planet, forest planet, bland planet with red salt, Casino Royale planet. Whereas George Lucas, every single planet is different. It's inspired by different countries, different cultures, different landscapes, and also it actually feels like an alien planet. That was my thing of like, people were talking about the visual diversity and how you felt like you were going on a proper adventure with this third one. No. Not for me visually. Personally, you're on a spaceship half the time of the the High Evolutionary spaceship. You're in space a lot, and then you're on the Guardians ship a lot, and then you're on Counter-Earth. Guardians 2 is like every scene in Ego's planet looks different. And as someone who has talked many times, even on the John Wick video about visual diversity, that's why I loved it so much, and that's why I didn't mind the artificialness, because saying if you love the way Guardians 2 look, it probably comes from loving the way the prequels look. And I do love the way George Lucas created the prequels. It felt a lot more over the top and therefore more grand and operatic as a result. Anyway, that's just...
No. I feel I 100% understand what you're saying. Like, I feel like if you're going to create something from scratch, you can essentially create...
May as well go for it.
Why not go all that, right? Dan, you were about to say something there.
Well, I was going to say about the prosthetic heads of the animals.
Yeah, okay.
There is some... I kind of forgave it because I was like, is this kind of a Star Wars homage? Are they trying to go for like old school? Like we've seen so much CG in just so many Marvel films, and it's just kind of and also, I mean, there's enough in Guardians itself. Is this kind of your kind of a little shout out to the love for the kind of the prosthetic-y rubberiness of these characters? So I kind of forgave it, and I think wasn't it when he produced, like when he'd make a turtle and it turned into
like
and then it immediately were like, that's just a man in a costume, rather than, and when it screamed it was like, that's quite threatening. And then immediately it's just so I did see that. But in terms of, I think, going to what you're saying, like a set piece in terms of the act 3 of a film, the setting standing out and looking sort of interesting, or like, I do agree I've only seen it once and dissecting in my head a bit now, it was just the spaceship, Counter-Earth, and that these 3 main points is that maybe they could have upped like a kind of setting, or I guess it's not really about that. I think that's the thing for James Gunn. It's the characters are key, and it's the stuff happening around them. And there's a lot of things we might want. I feel like if they don't go to a snowy place in a sequel, then that's just kind of why I don't know why I feel like, is the sequel going to go to somewhere snowy, somewhere a little different? But like they kind of he tends to just keep things quite sort of intimate or in the space where it's been happening a lot. He didn't change things up. I guess it wasn't like a rip-roaring gallivanting adventure. It was quite kind of, it was personal.
Very contained.
It was very contained.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have that much of an... I don't think I have much of an issue with the visual stuff in this film as much as maybe you guys do. But that's more so because I really appreciate it, especially with these big blockbuster films, is when you have that blend of practical and CGI.
Yeah.
Because this is a huge film. Like, we're traveling galaxies. Of course, there's going to be special effects and this and that. But it's the sort of the positioning of those scenes in conjunction with each other that sort of helps to establish a sort of, like, you're not able to like completely zone out with something completely ridiculous on screen. And I think there was where this all sort of reached the pinnacle was in that one shot scene in the third act.
Yes.
I think that was a seamless integration of visual effects, practical stunt work, and for me, one of the best maybe one of my favorite scenes in the MCU. Definitely one of the best fight scenes in the MCU. I just wish it was a bit longer, even though it was terrific.
I want to see it again. I've got it in my head, and that's all I've got. And the one shot of Rocket just kind of, just sort of there.
I'm running.
Yeah, I remember when that scene finished. We were holding our breaths, and me and Chris looked at each other at the end of the scene. We were like, "Oh my god, that was so sick!"
I looked at my dad and went, "Very
that was brilliant."
One of the great things about that scene as well is, and one of the great things about James Gunn, I talk a lot about the camera movements, everything, whatever. The way he sort of orchestrates these action sequences. He's not really ever been known as the action person in comparison to the Russo brothers or Shang-Chi or whatever, but that scene in particular felt like it was moving the way a comic book illustration would.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. I
That's
thought, fair enough. Well done, mate.
great.
But how much of it was like kind of slow-mo so you could really look at what was happening?
Yes,
And sometimes I think I don't know much about Zack Snyder's cinematography or the way he works, but he does a lot of slow-mo, right? But for some reason
fast-mo kind of.
right. But for some reason that it wasn't cringe to watch this. It was it was so beautiful. Like you could relish on that side of the screen. I saw it in IMAX, but like there was so much happening from every angle. And it was you just slowly make your way across the room.
Yeah, it was
just so well done.
There's a whole section in this fight scene where Star-Lord is throwing the buttons on these guards, and you're like, what's he doing? And it's all fast, and then it slows down, and all of them sort of come and try and attack him, and they all get buzzed at the same time, and they're all getting electrocuted, and it's brilliant. Chef's kiss. Fantastic.
No Sleep Till Brooklyn is that?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
I see. Right.
Do you know what? That was something very special. That was like for me that was like the cherry. Like it wasn't at the end, but it was the cherry on top. Like for the film, it was what pushed it for me into like, okay, this film, like. Not just because of the scene, but just building up to that scene and having something so refreshing and so like what we've missed from the MCU.
It really is.
A good scene of nothing like. Sometimes that's sometimes what it is. That's sometimes all it needs. It's just a good scene with good action, good like something that just you're just there watching and your eyes are just moving so quickly, your brain just trying to comprehend everything that's going on.
And just the way that scene was constructed, everyone has different fighting styles. It's they're telling their own little stories within this grander set piece, and it's almost like looking back on it now, that is more or less the last time we see these characters together really diving headfirst into conflict together. And I just think it's such a beautiful moment.
Are they all there? Apart from your dog and your Arrow Man. I do know their names.
Emotions wise, how did this one do for you guys? Because I cried twice.
Okay. I nearly cried.
I'm not a crier, but I shed a few very stressed. I was very like, they're doing this. They are really putting Rocket through his paces and adding with the I mean, they make him cute. I mean, like they're not making him cute just for the sake of like to make us hurt us more. But obviously, we have talked about the four little misfits. The original Guardians that Rocket had. Of I forgot their names.
Lila,
Teeth,
and Floor.
Asim Chowdhury, isn't it? Yeah. And Floor. That's it. Yeah. Just beautiful. I mean, you don't get much time with them, screen time really, but enough is sort of said.
Yeah.
They're tortured, and there's kind of some very dark comparisons to just tragic, like just I thought maybe that Holocaust comparisons in some ways. Obviously, numbers being drawn on them and things like that. He wasn't afraid to pull that punch to pat the punch 100%. With all of that. And that I think you did. We know about Rocket. We know he's tortured. We know his identity is not. He's not fully come to terms with who and what he is. He can't be called. And all of that the raccoon motif of calling him a raccoon throughout the films. I think you don't realise quite how it's almost like you're like a school bully with it, and you kind of laughed with it originally, and then how much that actually meant to Rocket and how important that was. Like shit, of course that's massively important to who he is and how he feels and the way he reacts. We kind of laugh at as part of, but like it's dreadful. Like it's all so much is packed into those flashback sequences, and it's I don't cry really. I don't even laugh much when I watch films, but like. No, my heart rate was definitely up in those. It definitely, and it's funny because you thought, of course, he's going to be okay. It's a kids' film, and I think that's also a part of this. I think a lot of the fan base was convinced someone was going to die.
Yeah,
and like the coloring of the font would say apparently adds up to.
Was it Drax was going to die or something?
Yeah, something like that. I was convinced someone was, and it's almost a twist in itself that they come out okay. Well, they come out changed, but like and the Guardians don't exist as the group they are, but it was almost like quite refreshing to be like, oh good, actually that wasn't necessary.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Yeah,
no one needed to die, and they have died in a way, like I don't know, Star-Lord just going back to Earth in a way was a death of his character.
Yeah, the
legendary Star-Lord no more. But like no, I was just very with it, way more with it than I have been for any other Marvel film. And emotionally it was just so, it was so well done.
May I add one last compliment to Mr. James Gunn before we move on? Because I've been playing devil's advocate long enough. Time to be positive again, as usual. The way he handles tone, what Dan was talking about, the dark nature of those scenes, of these decrepit animals who have been tortured, who have been pulled apart and put back together. I mean, it kind of reminded me of Sid from Toy Story.
Toy Story, yes.
Spider legs.
Yeah, but to have that, to have the Michelin Man scene in the same film, to have these emotional lines you're talking about, like, you want to destroy a Drax, you're meant to be a father, and like all of these lines, to have the emotion, to have the darkness, to have, like we talk about the long take scene, these Guardians feel like warriors, they feel dangerous. Even Star-Lord, who in some ways, when compared to like Thor or Iron Man and Captain America, has always been seen as too goofy, he's made to feel dangerous. And then to have the goofy camp as well. And somehow to have all of these different things combined into one film and make it work surprisingly well, that takes a seriously skilled director, someone who knows how to balance scenes, someone who knows how to edit, someone who knows how to use sound, music, images to kind of take us through this emotional journey and this tonal journey. That's partly why, when we talk about the future, that's partly why I'm really excited for him to do the DC stuff, partly why I'm really excited to see him do Superman, because I think he's going to do a drastically different thing from Zack Snyder, but at the same time, you'll still, despite all the goofiness, despite if he has Crypto the dog, just, whatever, you're still going to be able to take it seriously. And that's one of the greatest things about James Gunn as a director.
Yeah, that's really great that you said that, because I think like after this film, one of my first thoughts was, wow, I think James Gunn has just joined the league of directors who I can no longer see making a truly awful film.
Yeah.
Like, I just know now, like every time I go to see a James Gunn film, I almost hold my breath because of how unique his tones are, how he's able to blend comedy with like really like serious elements and whatnot. But once again, I don't know why I'm surprised, but he's proven time and time again that he's essentially a master at doing that.
Now that you say this, can I do one more quick off-topic question, please? Thank you.
Oh, who are the directors that?
Okay, not Nolan, Nolan.
Okay.
Who is in your opinion, the best director of comic book movies or superhero movies? Just say one name. No need for a reason. I'm just really curious. You can cut this bit out.
I would have to think, but
I want to say a name, but he hasn't. When I think about it, he was going to do Ant-Man as Edgar Wright, and I think there's definitely comparisons with James Gunn and Edgar Wright.
He did Scott Pilgrim.
He did Scott Pilgrim, and that's why I was
talking
going
about
to say
superhero films in general, or just more comic films.
Comic/superhero.
I'm not going to say your thing. I know what you're going to say, but
who am I going to say?
You're going to say Matthew Vaughn.
I am going to say Matthew Vaughn.
I might have to say Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi.
I'll have to say Sam Raimi.
That's a great shout.
But can I just say, my girlfriend, she watched the first 3 Spider-Man films just very quickly. For the first time, she's 22. And she
great detail.
I was going to say.
Don't worry, mate.
It's all right.
No, because the film. Well, look, how long have those films been out?
Okay.
I was 22. Do you understand?
Fair enough.
Okay. So then,
Sorry, God.
Yeah. So then, and she watched the Dark Knight films, and they're usually considered better. But she actually said to me she liked the Spider-Man films more than the Dark Knight films.
Okay.
So that's a big hot take.
I do feel like the Dark Knight films are like the Spider-Man films are a bit more accessible than Dark Knight.
They
films
take themselves very seriously as well.
Yeah.
Don't they? In a certain.
Sam Raimi is not a bad shout, I think.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say just action in general. Maybe I would have said like someone like James Cameron, but like if you're saying comic book films specifically,
and I get another hot take. If I wasn't gonna say Matthew Vaughn, I would have said Zack Snyder, because I'm a massive. I know a lot of people don't.
Snyder.
I think he's like Michael Bay. I like him more than most people. I like Michael
Do you
Bay.
reckon Jordan Peele could do a good superhero film?
Yeah,
I'd be
I
interested.
reckon the Marvels. Someone's eyeing him up to be like a different tone, because I think James Gunn wants someone to do the Guardian story but have their own take on it.
Yeah.
And the kind of the retro 80s vibe is done, and I know people will try and replicate that.
Yeah.
Now that we're on this train, can I just make one more?
Go,
Yeah.
go.
No, yeah, sorry. It's just I've been rewatching films from a certain franchise, and one director from that franchise who has not stepped into the comic book world, which I think he needs to be hired by either Marvel or DC, because he'll come in, make one good film. They don't need to keep him around. But that's Justin Lin, who does all the best Fast and Furious movies, and he did Star Trek Beyond. That guy would. They should have given him Thunderbolts. He could have directed Thunderbolts in his sleep.
Who's doing Thunderbolts?
I don't know, but I know there's a lot of people from the TV show Beef involved with Thunderbolts.
I would love to see Joseph Kosinski do like a fantastic
Green Lantern. No, give him Green Lantern. Give him Green Lantern.
Something like that. I think he's with Top Gun Maverick as well. You know my thoughts.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that was a little
Sorry,
that was a little director's diversion from the main discussion.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to talk about as we were sort of honing in on the mixed aspects of the film is, what did you guys think of Adam Warlock? Yeah.
No, I really enjoyed Adam Warlock.
You didn't.
I did.
You did like him.
I did.
Dan, not so much.
Yeah, I'm fine. He's fine. I think I think James Gunn had a different idea for Volume 3 when he made Volume 2, and I think he said that Infinity War Endgame has had to go a certain way.
Yeah.
And I reckon, I don't know how big. I don't know if the Disney corporate people like, in your post-credit scene Volume 2, let's get, but for your films, let's really spruce some excitement from Adam Warlock, massive character in comics, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And big for the Infinity War arcs. In
the comics, he's massive because he's got the Soul Stone.
Yeah, he's
Vision in his forehead. For me, this is the thing. I understand what they did with him. I understand this is one of a big character. He's part of the Sovereign. We got teased him at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and I think for the film, I'd say that I can understand, because it's something to base on. They said they spoke about how he was a baby. He was a bit of comic relief. He was a bit of someone to laugh at, someone to kind of like. Just add a bit of comedy to the film. Something to build on as well, because this aspect of him being just a baby and learning the ropes kind of thing, something to build on for the future, which I do like. Yeah. I think, it's a far cry from the comics. I think it's very, very different from the comics. He's a much more developed leader of the Guardians in the comics. And he's a really big powerhouse.
Yeah, I really like Will Poulter.
So good.
Yeah, I do like Will Poulter.
He's hilarious. And just, I don't know. I found the whole thing when he sort of like destroys that one Ravager. Yeah. And I thought that was hilarious. I was like, when he first comes into the film and he starts like wrecking the Guardians, I was like, holy shit, like this is serious stuff. Yeah, no, I don't know. He sort of just comes in and goes out, and I didn't really understand his placement that much in the film that much. That was my only sort of.
He was shoehorned.
Yeah, but I'm happy that he was. It's not something I'm like, oh, I wish he wasn't.
It also bodes well for the future. I hope to see him. I also want to say, I think I enjoyed Adam Warlock unconditionally. I really enjoyed the character, and I think the reason I did was because in the MCU, they already did the serious Superman character, which was Richard Madden as Icarus. Yeah. And if they hadn't done that, I would have said, well, Adam Warlock should have been more serious. Yeah. But because they already did the Icarus, I'm happy with the campy Adam Warlock, who just is
completely forgotten about those characters.
Yeah. Did you like it?
Yeah, it was again. I think about it more. I wanna watch it again. Okay. And I think it did more than I realized, like
Chris,
visually and
like
more interesting.
No.
Oh wow. No. We need to do an Eternals podcast.
No. Are you a big advocate?
I'm a big fan of half of the movie.
Okay.
The non-Chloe Zhao half.
Yeah.
There's so many characters.
That's a hot take, but anyway. Because people say Eternals is great because of Chloe Zhao. I think the other stuff is good. Sorry. Anyway,
good.
Keep going.
But Adam Warlock, I think I'm excited to see. In a weird way, he kind of reminded me a bit about how they've done Spider-Man in the MCU, which is for me, I know I had a lot of issues with the Tom Holland films up until No Way Home. But then what I realized was at the end of No Way Home is like those films were his origin story. Now he's Spider-Man, because we were complaining when's he going to become Spider-Man? With this film, it's more like, it's not. I don't know if it's an origin story of sorts, but it's something to sort of just step off and like now he can sort of do his own thing and have his own film, even though he's now essentially the part of the new wave of Guardians,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a shot that lingers on him at the end when he's watching them all dance, and he's kind of emotional, like
Yeah.
here I am, like, and it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
all right
there's
now.
my
There's
place
Yeah, and he
in
comes,
all
and
this.
he comes and gives,
Yeah.
gets in on the hug. Also,
Oh,
the nice little creation of Adam moment.
Yes.
that scene surprised me. I mean, I'd be like, we thought, is someone going to die?
Yeah,
But just seeing Star-Lord as a big bag of flesh,
I really
just
thought
bloating up.
That's the
Yeah, I
third
thought-
time that's happened. They do that in every Guardians film. He's always about to get frozen in space until someone helps him, right?
Yeah,
Oh my god, yeah.
First one,
Yeah.
Yondu ship comes. Second one, Yondu helps him. Third one, Adam Warlock helps him.
I believed, I truly, again, he got me. I was like, yeah, fine. I think this is a good arc. Like, he's saving his friend. He is just, and he's no longer got this mystical power in him. He's just a human at the end of the day, and there he is, sort of just dying. And
Yeah.
I thought it was, I was fine with how they sorted it.
I really loved how they concluded the film with the Florence and the Machine song. That was nice. I guess it wasn't like we've been listening to 80s and 70s and 80s and 90s music, and it was nice to kind of just Rocket switches on the iPad and it goes to 2000s, and it's like nice. It was a nice, and they're all dancing. And
It
it's
had cringe.
Yeah.
Did anyone
I don't
cringe?
know.
A tiny bit?
I didn't cringe. I really
Well,
enjoyed
I
it.
think it's so
going
awesome.
back to what you were saying, going to homages to Star Wars, could this not be like how they were at the end of
the Ewoks in
how they were
Return
all
of the Jedi.
I
dancing?
might
This
need
could be
to
like
Star Wars
the-
illiterate here. I might.
Yeah.
What do you,
Yeah.
what happens with the Ewoks?
Just have a nice little dance.
So they just
Oh,
kind of
fine.
have like a dance-off kind of festival at the end, like a celebration.
Yeah.
This is kind of like a festival, like a celebration. Like the thing is though, the dog days are over, but they're not. They're just not over because they're part of the wider for the whole characters of the family. I hope to see all these characters again.
Yep.
I'm sure in the next big end game level film they'll all hopefully make a return. But yeah, like there's more to be done. There's still, this is another thing that I want to I'd like to just say about the film. There's I felt like there's still more to be. There's so much more that can be done and should be done with a lot of these characters. And I think that I think that their inclusion they're a big part of the comics, and their inclusion in the rest of the MCU, and they're a big part. They're a lot of people's favorite characters.
Yeah.
Like the first Guardians film, despite what it's very popular. I remember when it first came out, everyone loved the film. Everyone was talking about it. And yeah, I think they should. I don't think we should stop here. It's sad. It's sad that a lot of these characters, we're not going to get another Guardians film.
I think it's unclear what they're gonna do, because it's supposed to sort of be the end of this chapter,
Yeah.
I guess, of the Guardians, but at the same time, we're hopeful for more adventures. And then at the end, it said the legendary Star-Lord will
return,
return.
but I would have thought that it
Said
would say the Guardians would return,
right?
as in
Yeah.
the new team would return,
Yeah.
but not.
I saw it as like a visual joke almost. Like he's eating cereal. He's just like a guy on Earth, and then it's kind of saying the legendary Star-Lord. Don't you worry, he's still there, and it's kind of just for him. But and it's kind of I don't know. But I know. But then Marvel films do that at the end of
I
all their
would
films.
love
don't
to
they?
see Peter Quill's influence on Earth, working as alongside the other ground level Earth superheroes. Like if he rocks up in Secret Invasion, I would love to see that. If he
With
rocks up in
blasters
Captain
and-
America 4,
Yeah.
would love to see that. Like he doesn't need to go in space; he can be a superhero on Earth. And he would function
Who would he get on
perfectly
with?
alongside, Bucky and
Yeah.
Sam Wilson and all the rest of them. That would be cool.
But yeah, no, I think on that note, unless anyone has anything else they want to add to the mix / Dan?
I did. One thing I was going to ask you guys. Did you guys all question when who was it? It's a Nathan Fillion's character, Michelin
Right.
Man, shoots Drax,
Yeah.
and it's quite.
It's a
quite
heavy
intense.
shot.
Quite intense.
Yeah.
Well, it is. It's like this. Is this him being done? Is this our sort of Act 2, end of Act 2 kind of thing that kicks them off into that gets them into the climax with more motivations? They've lost the friend, and he's just absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have those medipacks that they kind of just sort of threw
Magically
into the
heal everything.
douche.
Now that
Which
you
end
say
up-
that, there
Yeah.
are a lot of sort of fake deaths in the film.
could have been an
Right.
alternate cut where they
Yeah.
actually killed Drax at that point or
Maybe,
something.
Like in the when Adam Warlock attacks at the start, Groot's head is taken off. And what?
Yeah.
And then
He's
and he's
magically
fine.
back, yeah.
Then the Drax thing, and he gets shot twice, and like Mantis is screaming like, "Oh my god, is this the end of Drax?" And then there's Rocket, of course, dies, doesn't die, comes back.
Well, that felt earned, but all the others didn't feel particularly.
And then
earned,
like Star-Lord at the end dies, doesn't die, come back. Like,
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe maybe they're just playing
Which
around.
one of
Like,
you guys said it off camera that he goes to where Harry Potter goes when he dies?
oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Rocket in the.
Was that King's Cross?
Yeah, King's
Yeah, he
Cross.
goes
yeah.
Socially
King's Cross.
white
Yeah.
King's Cross.
No. Yeah, no, but I think on a whole, guys, like I was really satisfied with this final volume of Guardians. I think they've left it in a good place. James Gunn is like
very good place.
Yeah.
He's closed the book, but also sort of left it open
enough to do more.
Open enough to do more.
Yeah.
What my next question was going to be on was more so, how do you guys feel moving forward in the MCU? Do you think this is just specific to James Gunn and the Guardians, or do you think this success and this, sort of satisfaction with the fans is going to hopefully or continue?
Okay, so for me, interesting that the rest of the year with the MCU, my opinion, I've given enough opinions, but I'm not that excited. The only thing I am excited for is Secret Invasion, because it looks so drastically different from everything else.
So just as a reminder, the upcoming Marvel projects that we do have, we have Secret Invasion. I think that's the next
show.
The show. Then we have The Marvels,
which
I'm not excited for at all.
Nice.
I'm not excited for at all.
And then we have Echo, which is either this year or next year, which I don't really know if we need it.
No,
we'll see.
I'll take that.
Okay.
Loki season 2 is supposed to be.
Nice.
Yeah,
I'll do
great.
that.
Yeah, I'm happy for
Ironheart is apparently this year or next year.
Sure.
Agatha, Covenant of Darkness, great. And then Daredevil next year. Early next
even
year.
then, I'm like,
When's Deadpool? Is that next year?
Deadpool, I think it's next year.
Yeah.
So is Guardians Phase 5?
Yeah, it is, because Ant-Man was the first Phase 5 film.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But sorry.
But yeah, so
continue.
because of that, and because the only movie remaining is The Marvels, which like, when I told you, when I saw the trailer, I literally thought, I've seen this movie before. There was nothing new or unique about it. Now that we've seen James Gunn do this with Marvel after having come off a few bland movies from the MCU, I'm looking to DC.
Yeah.
I'm looking to The Flash, even though we've all said our off-camera thoughts about that and how it should progress. But I'm looking forward to the Superman film. I'm looking forward to this Green Lantern True Detective Inspired series that they're doing. I'm excited for the Batman Brave and the Bold, even though I'm still heartbroken that Affleck's not coming back. But I'm looking to DC now, thanks to James Gunn, because of the confidence he has instilled in for us as a filmmaker, but also as a fan.
Yeah.
As someone who is able to manage different stories and threads and stuff like that. So, DC.
Now, I'm so happy that you said that, because when they started announcing all the new slate for the DC stuff, I think I was just a bit sort of annoyed with the whole Henry Cavill situation, Ben Affleck's. I didn't really know what the hell was going on. I was like, you know what? I'll watch the films, but I don't know if I'm going to be
as invested.
As invested. But now that he's done this, it's kind of like, okay, you know what? Fine.
Do it.
Let's see what you can do. But no, that's just me. I don't know, guys. Future of the MCU. Are we hopeful? Okay.
I want to say I hope so.
Okay. You hope. You hope.
I'm hopeful.
You hope.
I think. Well, look. I think we've had a few. Some of the films that we've seen, like in the recent times, we spoke about like Quantumania. We spoke very intensively on that. Love and Thunder, Multiverse of Madness. This has been one of the very few good Marvel films in recent memory.
Yeah.
And yes, in recent memory, unfortunately, that's the case. For the future, I don't want to say I'm of the same opinion as you as I'm looking to the DC, but I'm turning my head. I think I'm not too excited for the upcoming projects. I'm not super excited.
This is the only thing. I just feel like whenever I look at the MCU and the Guardians films specifically, I always think of the Guardians films as more so James Gunn's films.
They're separate.
As opposed to the
they're
MCU.
separate.
So for me, I hope that this film is sort of going to be like a beacon in the darkness for the MCU and be like, you know what? We'll try
Let's just say this film, I think we probably all agree, it does more for James Gunn than it does for Marvel.
Maybe. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Because it shows what they're missing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think Disney are trying to I think they're aware of this. And I'm not. I think Disney's ownership of Marvel is problematic, and I think because obviously James Gunn was fired from this and then put back on, and I think that's almost forgotten. Like, I don't know if this would have this been his final hurrah. I'm not sure, but like they let him do what he wanted. I think I've seen in a few interviews he got the F-bomb in there. He got an F word, which is like fine. And like a lot of kids all know it. Like it's not really the stigma behind that isn't quite as intense as we all maybe thought it might be.
Yeah.
But like obviously some of the gore in there is quite intense. But like I think it's Disney letting directors truly just do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I think they do, and MCU needs to go R-rated. Comics are brutal, stories can be brutal, and tragic, and not necessarily R-rated, because obviously James Gunn's proved it doesn't need to be a 15. But I think there's a new ownership, isn't there? They're now put the gaps between their projects are getting a bit bigger. Marvel's was going to be July, I think. So that obviously the CG, was not something we didn't touch on at all. Is this CG stood out as a lot better than some of the previous projects.
Absolutely.
Which I thought maybe it wouldn't quite catch it in time, because I thought maybe this had got the curse of the previous Phase 4 films, which didn't look dreadful, but there was just something slightly.
Yeah. As you're saying all this, something's dawned on me, which is that because of James Gunn, you look at what are the best or the better from a filmmaking point of view, Phase 4 movies or Phase 5 movies? Is the Shang-Chi. It is Wakanda Forever from a filmmaking point of view, and then it's this. Perhaps people, when they blame this, they should stop blaming the MCU, because at the end of the Kevin Feige is a quality producer. Maybe it is just the director's fault.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I've been vocal a lot about,
the vision.
Maybe sometimes
like Peyton Reed with the Ant-Man films, and like John Watts, who I'd say like Mark Webb with the Amazing Spider-Man films. Those films feel like they were made after Tom Holland, because the visual effects are better, the cinematicness is better. Perhaps it's not people love Taika Waititi, but come on, he's made Jojo Rabbit great, Ragnarok great, whatever. But directors can stumble. All right, and perhaps
100%.
You're blaming the studio, sure, but this is the same studio that made Endgame, Winter Soldier, and trusted the directors. Perhaps it's just about the directors, and James Gunn's done a good job, Coogler's done a good job, Des and Daniel Cretton's done a good job. Hey, maybe blame is being placed in the wrong place. And I'm saying that as a director.
Yeah, no, I also do think that people do underestimate how difficult it is to make a good film that's going to appeal to millions of fans, and the amount of pressure that one has to take on. It can't be understated.
And I think sorry to interrupt you, but I think as well to finding something new. Look how many concepts and how many themes they've gone through throughout the years in the MCU to find that new thing that's going to grip people. That's going to. But I guess like as well at the same time, like the same stories can be told again in different lights and different perspectives, and I think that I just think that there needs to be more risk taken. I think there needs to be less kind of political correctness, less kind of filtering,
playing it safe.
Yeah, less playing it safe. And I think what you said about directors, I do agree with that. But I also think that at the end of the day, these guys at Marvel, they're looking to make big money films, and the only way they can do that is by incorporating so many of these aspects and so many of these and kind of trying to reach for the profit as much as they can. And I think directly or indirectly that just affects the quality of the film in itself, because if that's the starting base, if the base isn't to give the fans what like a film that they want to talk to their kids about in 20, 30 years, saying like, I remember when I watched this film and how I felt, because these films like recently they're not making me feel a lot of things. This film I wouldn't say is one of them. This film going back to the emotional part, yes, I felt bad for some of the characters in the past of Rocket, and a lot of the characters, but I felt things. But if you don't feel anything, and if you don't go home and talk about it and talk about the film, and if it doesn't stick in your mind, then how much impact has that film had on you, and how good could you rank that film?
No, I think that's a very important point. I also think that there's an argument that's also like, me and you have been going to see these films since we were 11, 10 years old, right? We are different people now compared to back then.
What was the first MCU film you guys saw together?
I think it was the first Avengers.
It was the first Avengers.
That's a good one to start with.
Although I have watched every single MCU film in the cinema since Iron Man 1. I remember watching that, and it was great. I'm trying to, if I watched Iron Man 1 like how I'm now, I think I would have actually loved it more.
Oh wow.
Than
100%.
I didn't care at all.
You didn't?
I didn't. I even saw Avengers and I wasn't taken by it. It was with this weird transition. Watching the trailer for Avengers 2, I was like, I want to get in this. I'm nice. Just in. And Avengers 2 wasn't. I don't know how that's seen. It wasn't a particularly. Was that a film?
It was seen as just mid. It was seen as the setup film.
But then
I enjoyed it a lot. I really like it.
And Ant-Man for some reason was just like, I'm here now. It just felt silly. It felt, but obviously that's when they get you with the in-depth stories and just the characters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just testament to how different everyone's
taste
stuff. Yeah,
relationship.
like
Yeah,
a film
100%.
that I don't like or you don't like might actually connect with so many other people. We
Yeah.
don't know. On that note, guys, I think we will conclude the discussion here. Thank you so much, guys, for coming
Thank
on the
you
show.
for having us.
You guys have been amazing.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe.
Thank you,
Joe.
Joe.
I don't know if you can hear us. Yeah, you can hear us. Yeah, everyone. I think what's great about you guys is you're all very, very different, and you bring really unique perspectives that I really appreciate. So thank you.
Thank you for having us, man.
All their socials will be linked down below if you want to check any of them out. They're doing some really great stuff. So you know where to find all that stuff. Thank you guys so much for listening, for watching, and I will catch you very soon in the next episode of the Popcorn Podcast. Cheers.